One solitary man dared to stand against the tide, risking his entire world to unveil a forbidden chronicle to Black America, a courageous act of revelation that shattered the silence. He boldly dismantled the illusions held by his own kin, offering a perspective so earth-shattering that it severed the sacred bonds of family, leaving him estranged and isolated in the cold. Those he once called friends turned their backs, retreating into the shadows of denial and withdrawing their support. The broader community branded him a traitor to the tribe, yet he stood firm, armed not with empty rhetoric, but with undeniable proof. He laid out the documents, and his revelations struck at the very foundations of accepted history, biblical understanding, and the core of self-identity. This was the fruit of years spent in silent, solitary study. He delved into the dark corners of archives, examining ancient records that the world had been told were lost, unreachable, or simply did not exist. He read the scriptures with fresh eyes, stripping away centuries of cultural conditioning, and when he finally broke his silence, the reaction was immediate, ferocious, and unforgiving. They dismissed him as a madman, a lunatic raving in the wind, accusing him of sowing discord and division where there should be peace. But truth has a resonance that cannot be silenced. The authenticity of his sources stood like a fortress, unassailable and pure. Every scriptural citation rang true, and every historical detail withstood the fiercest cross-examination. What was this perilous discovery that cast him out into the wilderness? He illuminated a grand narrative that the titans of history have systematically obscured and twisted for ages. It was a story of ancient majesty, of a bloodline rich with inherent power and a true heritage that had been stolen. He exposed the unseen gears of systemic forces that have engineered marginalization, grinding down a people for century after century. Once you touch this forbidden knowledge, the lens through which you view reality will fracture and reform. There is no unseeing this transformation. It completely rewires your understanding of where we come from, the nature of our suffering, and the design of society. This discussion transcends the petty squabbles of politics and modern movements. We are speaking of eternal truths woven into the very fabric of ancient texts, truths that have been manipulated by the hands of power for generations untold. The bearer of this light knew the heavy price he would pay, yet he walked into the fire willingly, choosing the raw edge of truth over the warm comfort of lies and security. And now, you stand at the precipice, ready to gaze into that same abyss of truth. But before we unlock his specific findings, we must first scrutinize the gatekeepers of our history, understanding the dark motives of those who built the frameworks that imprison our past. Only when you comprehend the machinery of this great deception will the revelations that follow fall into perfect, crystalline alignment. For hundreds of years, the architects of our reality, powerful institutions, have sculpted the story of humanity to fit a specific, controlled mold. We speak of the ivory towers of academia, the sacred halls of religious orders, the iron grip of governments, and the sprawling reach of media empires. These are not abstract concepts, but tangible leviathans with vast resources, all dedicated to curating and controlling the memory of the world. Let us look at a stark example. Deep within the Vatican Apostolic Library, there lie approximately 85 kilometers, that is about 53 miles of shelves, groaning under the weight of an estimated 75,000 ancient manuscripts. Alongside them rest over 1.1 million printed books, a hoard of knowledge vast beyond comprehension. While a chosen few with the right credentials may enter, vast swathes of material, particularly documents from after 1922, remain under lock and key, shrouded in diplomatic silence. This secrecy births a haunting question that echoes through the halls of time. What dangerous truths are sleeping in those vaults, and why is the world deemed unready to witness them? Cast your gaze upon the Smithsonian, that grand steward of memory, now standing beneath the weight of scrutiny for how it guards the secrets of the earth. Many believe it veils archaeological findings that threaten to unravel the mainstream tapestry of time itself. Think on the mysteries suggesting that the soul of Africa touched the Americas in an era long before Columbus set sail. These artifacts spark a fire of debate, hinting at forgotten voyages and spiritual connections, such as the look to the colossal Olmec heads of Mexico, with features that scream of African origins to some, though the establishment denies any deliberate suppression of this connection. These heated battles reveal how institutional agendas can effectively erase the footprints of early black presence and the grandeur of advanced African civilizations from the public mind. This is not a local anomaly. It is a pattern of erasure that stretches across the entire globe like a spiderweb. Why is the majestic era of Moorish rule in Europe, spanning 781 years, from 711 to 1492 AD, reduced to a mere footnote in our school books? In those centuries, the Moors of North Africa, a tapestry of diverse peoples, gifted Europe with the lights of mathematics, architecture, medicine, and astronomy, sowing the seeds of the Renaissance itself. To cut this out is to craft a myth of Eurocentric supremacy, a lie of omission that distorts reality. We must ask, who reaps the rewards of this silence? Who profits when the true greatness of a people is buried in the dust? The cathedrals and churches have also played their part, wielding the brush and the chisel to reshape the divine narrative. For generations, the holy figures, Jesus, Moses, the disciples, have been recast in the image of white Europeans, colonizing the very imagination of the faithful. Sacred texts have been pruned and polished in translation, shifting meanings and discarding ancient books that celebrated a diverse spectrum of humanity. This was no accident. It was a slow, methodical surgery performed on the body of history over millennia. Cast your mind back to the Council of Nicaea in the year 325 AD, where the first great edits of the canon were made. Under the watchful eye of Emperor Constantine, they decided which words were gods and which were heresy, standardizing a doctrine for the empire. Though race was not their stated aim, they purged texts like the Book of Enoch, a book that describes Noah in ways that defy the modern image. A text still cherished in the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, but banished from the West. In those dark times, to possess such forbidden scrolls was to invite a punishment of blood and fire. This was never simply a recording of events past. It was a carefully crafted sculpting of time itself, a deliberate curation of memory that continues to spark fierce battles in our present day. In this current epoch, the scribes and scholars who dare to challenge the sanctioned chronicles have faced the ruin of their life's work, stripped of their funding and cast into the shadows of discreditation. Those brave anthropologists who unearth the forgotten lineages of black civilizations or trace migration paths that defy the mapmakers have met with walls of resistance, their findings branded as fringe madness. The wardens of the narrative stand vigilant even now, and in this very moment, the rabbit hole goes deeper, for the agencies of the state have been woven directly into this web of suppression. The documented infiltration by the Central Intelligence Agency through COINTELPRO, that vast counterintelligence shadow, was no random act of chaos. From the year 1956 until 1971, this dark hand struck against the seekers of justice, extinguishing the lights of leaders, sowing poison in the streets, and dismantling the very structures of hope. Why would the powers that be pour such immense treasuries and resources into the suppression of a single people? Unless a primal terror drove them, unless they held a secret knowledge that shook them to their core. One researcher, upon gazing into this abyss, spoke a truth that resonates with the soul. She confessed, saying, I sense in my spirit that there is a profound reason why the children of color, and specifically the black community, have faced such relentless persecution through the ages. Does a greater mystery lie beneath the surface? Something far more significant than the crude hatred of racism. For are we truly to believe that this colossal machinery of oppression exists solely because someone disdains the shade of another's skin? It defies all logic. What if the blood carried a celestial gift? What if they were born possessing a power so valuable, so potent, that the common man remains blind to its existence? Perhaps the architects of this world, the wealthy and the powerful, deciphered this riddle long ages ago. That inquiry unlocks the gates of perception, for she speaks the truth. This conspiracy reaches depths far beyond the shallow waters of prejudice. It pierces the very soul of your existence, touching upon the essence of what you carry within you and explaining why the system trembles before it. The great illusionist, the media machine, plays its part with terrifying precision, curating every stereotype and every omission to craft a prison for the mind. Do not mistake design for chance. This is not ignorance, but a sophisticated programming intended to sever you from the knowledge of your true self. For when you command the vision, when you dictate the legends taught in schools, shown in the theaters, and preached from the pulpits, you hold the power to shape identity itself. And if you hold the keys to a person's selfhood, if you can define who they believe they are, you become the master of their ultimate destiny. The man who stepped from the shadows to expose this spoke words of thunder. He declared, "This is no relic of the dust and archives. This is an active, breathing suppression unfolding in the eternal now. The fortress of lies is guarded with zeal at any cost, and when a voice threatens to breach the walls, the retribution is swift and merciless. It is why he walks alone. It is the reason his kin turned their backs, why those who once revered him now cast slurs, for the truth he bears threatens to crumble the entire edifice of power. What arcane knowledge did he unveil? What secret is so precious that it warrants such total suppression? Allow me to guide you down the spiral, layer by layer, into the heart of the mystery. But take heed of my warning. Once you cross this threshold, the door seals behind you. Once you witness what I am about to reveal, your vision of the world will be irrevocably transformed. Let us begin with a truth hidden in plain sight, a concept you believe you understand, but have barely glimpsed: melanin. The word has echoed in your ears since youth, taught in the academies as nothing more than a pigment, a simple substance painting the skin. That is the veil drawn over your eyes, the shallow explanation constructed to prevent you from seeking the deeper waters of truth. This man delved into the forbidden sciences ignored by the institutions, and what he found changes everything. Melanin is far more than a simple pigment. It is nothing less than an organic supercomputer woven into the very fabric of your being. The sages of science have uncovered that melanin drinks in the light, absorbs electromagnetic frequencies and sound, and transmutes them into raw biological power. Hear this clearly. Your skin, if it is blessed with this substance, is harvesting the energy of the cosmos and turning it into fuel for your vessel. It was found that this miraculous substance can weave electricity from the very light itself, requiring no wires, only presence. Contemplate the magnitude of this truth. A being rich in melanin, standing beneath the sun, is literally charging with power like a living battery. We speak not in parables or metaphors. This is hard, documented scientific reality. Your vessel is a conduit of lightning, generating power and absorbing energy in ways that those without this gift simply cannot comprehend. Yet the mystery deepens further. For melanin does not merely reside upon the surface of your skin. It dwells in the sanctuary of the mind, concentrated in the very centers that govern consciousness, awareness, and your perception of reality itself. Why would a mere hue occupy the throne in the most critical chambers of your neurological kingdom? Why dwell in the pineal gland, that sacred space the ancients revered as the seat of the soul? And this is where the revelation leaves one breathless. The titans of technology have gazed upon melanin with envy, studying it for the future of supercomputing. It conducts the symphony of data, processes information, and holds properties that synthetic creations struggle in vain to mimic. If it were but a color, why would the masters of Silicon Valley look upon it with such hunger? The ancients of Egypt held this wisdom close to their hearts, naming it the magical black substance, for they understood with absolute clarity that it was of divine origin. The ancients possessed a deep understanding that modern minds have largely forgotten. This substance was the sacred bridge, linking the physical vessel to the ethereal realm. Yet, this profound wisdom was not merely misplaced. It was deliberately buried, silenced by those who wished to sever that connection. However, the ancient code remains etched within your biology, pulsating beneath the surface regardless of your conscious awareness. I implore you to look inward and consider a singular, haunting query. If this dark matter were truly nothing more than simple biological paint, devoid of higher purpose, then what drove the captors of old to obsessively scrutinize the physiology of the enslaved with such feverish intensity? Why do the dusty archives overflow with perplexed reports of unnatural stamina, of bodies that could labor beyond the point of exhaustion, weather the unweatherable, and regenerate with a speed that defied their understanding? Their private diaries and public ledgers alike are stained with ink and confusion. They chronicled these anomalies incessantly, baffled by a vitality that their logic could not explain in their official correspondence. Faced with the unanswerable riddle of where this strength originated, the oppressors found themselves cornered by the unknown. To mask their bewilderment, they spun a wicked fabrication to soothe their own insecurities. They proclaimed a falsehood that echoes even now, that the darker vessel possesses a dulled sensitivity, incapable of perceiving agony as acutely as their paler counterparts. This deception became the shield for their savagery, yet it was hollow at its core. In reality, they recognized a spark within the oppressed that was absent in themselves. A spark they did not honor, but rather trembled before in terror. Thus began the twisted ritual, dissecting the miracle in the shadows of the laboratory while crushing the spirit in the light of the plantation. Consider the grim foundations of modern women's medicine. The entire discipline stands upon a bedrock of torture, forged through the unanesthetized surgical exploitation of captive mothers. They hid their sadism behind the clinical mask of that same old lie, insisting these women were immune to the torment of the blade. Yet the sinister truth was a hunger for knowledge. They sought to locate the wellspring of that supernatural fortitude, to carve out the mystery and possess it for themselves. They yearned to decode the alchemy that rendered these vessels so unbreakable, so distinct from their own fragility. Ask yourself, why exhibit such desperation to comprehend a being you insist is beneath you? Why pour fortunes, decades of time, and vast resources into the analysis of a people you publicly deem as lesser than the dust? The answer lies in the inversion. Perhaps they are not lesser at all. Perhaps they are carriers of a celestial gift that remains forever out of the oppressor's reach. Perhaps the entire architecture of supremacy is merely a fragile dam built to hold back a deluge of truth, too volatile and dangerous for the world to handle. Do not be engaged in the illusion that this was solely a machine of commerce or unpaid toil. This was a calculated metaphysical containment strategy against a perceived existential threat. Meditate on the implications of that reality. If you stood face to face with a lineage wielding capacities you lacked, an endurance that shamed your own, and a direct line to the Creator that was barred to you, how would you respond? You are left with two paths: submit in reverence to their greatness, or wage a total war to shatter their psyche, enslave their bodies, and erase their memory so they never awaken to their own majesty. Allow that heavy truth to settle into your spirit for a moment. Arrest your thoughts and truly see the picture I have painted. The bondage of centuries was not a haphazard evil, nor was it fueled by simple avarice. It was a systematic dampening of a frequency the rulers were terrified of, a frantic attempt to bridle a power they desperately coveted. Yet, understanding the biological element is merely the first step across the threshold of this revelation. The rabbit hole descends into the abyss when the veil of Eurocentric interpretation is torn from the holy texts. When one dares to read the ancient scrolls with unclouded vision, a paralyzing realization emerges. It is discovered that the protagonists of the divine narrative, the Israelites, the chosen bloodline of the Most High, bore the visage of the African. This is not a matter of shadow or spiritual allegory. We speak of the literal, undeniable hue of the skin, woven into the very fabric of history. The proofs have been resting within the pages for millennia, waiting for eyes that can see. You have simply been conditioned to look past them. Bear witness to the text. Turn your attention to Lamentations chapter 4, verse 8. The scripture declares plainly, "Their visage is blacker than a coal." This passage speaks of the aristocracy of Israel, not merely swarthy, but darker than the deepest carbon. This is the unadulterated word. Consider Lamentations chapter 5, verse 10. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. Once more, the physical description of the tribes is unmistakable. Now, observe Jeremiah chapter 14, verse 2. Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black unto the ground. The very tribe of the kings, the root of David, the earthly bloodline of the Messiah painted in the shades of the earth itself. Listen to the Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. I am black, but comely. Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. Here we have the wisest monarch in the annals of time, defining his own reflection. And what of Job, chapter 30, verse 30? My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. The most righteous servant, tested by the Almighty, bore the complexion of the night. Do the scales fall from your eyes? Do you perceive the massive reality that has been obscured right before you since birth? These are not anomalies. They are the rhythmic heartbeat of the entire Testament. Time and again, the voices of the Scripture define their own existence in the hues of ebony and bronze, over and over again. Yet, the pulpits remain silent on this matter, and the Sunday schools are mute. In their place, they offer you the idol of a flaxen-haired, azure-eyed Savior. They flood your consciousness with frescoes of apostles who bear the features of Rome and Greece. They have colonized your imagination, convincing you this is a saga of Europe, when in truth, it has always been the song of Africa. It has always been the legacy of the black experience. The stones themselves cry out in agreement. The frescoes of ancient Egypt immortalize the Israelites not as strangers, but as kin, bearing dark complexions, broad features, and the hair of wool. The very physical traits that modern society has spent centuries scorning are the exact royal signatures depicted on the walls of the pharaohs regarding the Hebrew people. These were not nameless bondsmen lost to history. They were the children of Israel. They were the progenitors of your bloodline. Even the fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls, those most ancient guardians of the text, whisper the truth. They describe the great lawgiver Moses as a man of dark skin. But rest assured, this revelation will never grace the sermon on Sunday morning, nor will it be found in the authorized study guides of the establishment. For if the veil were lifted to reveal that Moses bore the visage of an ebony king, if the prophets walked with the skin of the night sky, and if the ancient Israelites were truly a black people, the very foundations of your perceived reality would begin to tremble. The soul would immediately demand to know why the sacred portraits were painted over, bleaching the history from the canvas of time. You would gaze into the shadows, seeking the architects of this great deception, wondering who reaped the spoils of this lie, and what other secrets lie buried beneath centuries of fabrication. Such inquiries are the keys to a vault of knowledge so potent, so volatile, that the established hierarchies of the world would dissolve into dust before its brilliance. It was discovered that the pen was used as a sword to sever the connection. In the ancient, uncorrupted manuscripts, the description of blackness stood as firm and undeniable as a mountain. Yet, as the ages turned, the interpreters wove a fog, turning the specific into the ambiguous words like swarthy, dark, or tanned, replaced the absolute truth, for the translators crafted their work with calculated intent. Like a slow erosion, they chipped away at the identity, blurring the lines one word at a time until the image was lost to the haze, hidden just enough to escape the casual eye. However, should you journey back to the primal Hebrew tongue, to the very root of the sacred text, the reality stands unshakable, luminous, and undeniable. The characters who walked the pages of Holy Writ bore the complexion of the earth itself. While the ancient world was a tapestry of many hues, this truth remains specific. The central figures, the chosen lineage around whom the cosmos of Scripture revolves, the Israelites carried the rich, deep melanin of the sun-kissed. Comprehend the magnitude of this revelation, for it carries a spiritual weight heavier than the oceans and matters more than the mind can initially grasp. If the children of the diaspora are not merely present in the text, but are the very essence of it, if they are the living blood of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, then the destiny written in the stars, and every prophecy of Israel belongs solely to them. Allow me to guide your spirit to the prophetic seal that binds history to the present moment and unveils the ultimate reality. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. This is the thunderclap that awoke the silent observers to a truth they could no longer suppress. Open your inner ear and let the vibration of these ancient decrees resonate within the chambers of your soul. And the divine shall carry thee back into the land of bondage with ships, by the path I once declared thou shalt never see again. There ye shall be offered for sale to your adversaries as bondsmen and bondswomen, yet no man shall redeem you. We must dismantle this verse piece by piece, for within its structure lies the skeleton key that unlocks the mysteries of identity. To be brought into Egypt again via vessels, in the mystical language of the Scripture, Egypt is the eternal symbol of the house of servitude and iron bondage. Yet this prophecy speaks of a return to that spiritual prison, explicitly navigated across the waters by wooden hulls. Cast your mind across the river of time. When has humanity witnessed the mass abduction of a specific lineage, ferried across vast oceans into the jaws of hell? The transatlantic crossing of sorrow. It stands alone as the singular tragedy that aligns perfectly with the ancient foresight of the prophets. There, upon foreign shores, you were bartered to your foes, not as captives of honor, not as prisoners of war, but sold as merchandise. This was a commerce of flesh and blood, where the divine spark within humanity was traded as mere chattel in a commercial enterprise. The vision captures the horror with divine precision, and the phrase, "no man shall buy," you speaks to a deeper rejection in the aftermath. When the physical chains were struck off, the people became a remnant that society sought not to integrate, but to discard, liberated yet scorned, free yet utterly oppressed, carrying the title of freedom while remaining anchored to the ocean floor of the social order. This is the ancestral memory of the black experience in the Americas. Only one tribe in the annals of existence bears the scars of this specific prediction. Only one bloodline was dragged in, floating dungeons, to a land of unceasing. Only one collective spirit has endured the exact tribulation foretold in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. The descendants of the Middle Passage, Black Americans, mirror this truth. Yet the revelation does not cease there. The scroll unrolls further. The chapter details a cascade of afflictions that would haunt Israel should they forsake the divine, and each curse mirrors the tribulation of Black America with chilling exactitude. Look to verse 44. The stranger shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. A systemic weight designed to keep a people submerged, forever barred from the zenith of power. This is no twist of fate, but a spiritual decree. It is the ancient word manifesting in flesh. Verse 32 speaks of sons and daughters given to another, while parents watch with eyes that rot from longing. This is the agonizing rupture of the family unit that defined the era of the whip. Infants torn from the breast and sold like cattle. Even in this year of 2026, the systems of the state continue to sever black children from their kin at alarming rates. The prophecy breathes life before our eyes. Consider the words of verse 37. Thou shalt become a wonder, a proverb, and a byword among the nations. The mockery, the caricatures, the stinging epithets that echo globally prophecy fulfilled. Verse 48 heralds the yoke of iron upon the neck, weighing down the spirit until the destruction of the identity is complete. The cold, hard metal of the slave era, transitioning into the invisible yet impenetrable bars of the modern prison industrial complex. This nation holds more souls in cages than any other, and the sons of this specific lineage bear the brunt of that captivity disproportionately. The iron yoke is not a metaphor, it is a reality. One could traverse every verse, but surely the spiritual vision is clearing before your eyes. Every single affliction catalogued in Deuteronomy 28 aligns perfectly with the historical trajectory of the Black American experience. It is not a mere resemblance, it is a mirror image. The ancient seer described the fate of Israel, and history has recorded it in your flesh. The cycle continues to spin even now. If the garment of curses fits the body, then the identity belongs to the wearer. If the ancient scroll narrates your specific suffering, then you are the protagonist of that story. The Black Americans are the hidden royal descendants of the biblical Israelites. This is no mere allegory, nor a spiritual metaphor meant only for the soul's comfort. We speak of the literal bloodline, the undeniable genetic heritage, and the unfolding of ancient prophecy in living, breathing flesh. Suddenly, the veil lifts, and the terrifying magnitude of this revelation becomes undeniable to your spirit. You perceive now why the powers of this world labor with such desperation to bury it. For if the children of the diaspora are indeed Israel, the anointed flock of the Most High, then the very axis of reality shifts. The entire hierarchy of authority is unmasked as a usurper. The vast machinery of domination is stripped naked, revealed as nothing less than an open insurrection against the divine order. The accepted chronicle of human history is overturned completely, and this is precisely the apocalypse of truth that the scholar from within the system dared to unveil. He aligned the scattered stars of evidence. He presented the receipts. He demonstrated the truth through the Holy Scriptures, the annals of the past, and the visions of the prophets. And for this act of clarity, his own kin rose against him. Yet, before we descend deeper into the abyss, before I reveal the darker strata of this mystery, you must witness the architects of the silence. And ask yourself, why? Because such precision is never random. This was no accident of fate. This was a deliberate, systematic, multi-generational conspiracy designed to erase your true name from the earth. Once you identify the hands behind the curtain, the chaos transforms into clarity. Allow me to illuminate exactly who stood sentinel over this secret, and the lengths to which they went to keep it entombed. The plot to obscure the true identity of the Ebony Kings runs deeper than the mortal imagination can fathom. The researcher traced the threads back through the corridors of time, finding the same shadows emerging in every epoch. This was not coincidence. This was a grand coordination. Let me reveal what he unearthed. At the very heart of this spider's web sits the Vatican. For eons, the Church has acted as the gatekeeper of history. They dictated what was remembered, what was preserved, and what was cast into the flames. When the fleets of Europe set sail to conquer Africa and the Americas, the pontiff issued papal bulls, decrees sealed with lead that granted Christian empires divine license to shackle the heathen. The doctrine of discovery in 1452 and the Romanus Pontifex in 1455 stand as the smoking guns of history. These documents specifically sanctioned the enslavement of African bodies. The sanctuary was not merely complicit. The Church forged the theological chains. Yet the roots of this deception burrow even deeper into antiquity. Cast your mind back to the Council of Nicaea in 325 Anno Domini. Emperor Constantine summoned the bishops to hammer the diverse iron of faith into a single blade. They acted as arbiters of the word, deciding which scrolls were divine and which were heresy. Any text that made the African and black identity of the Israelites too undeniable was discarded. The ancient Book of Enoch vividly describes the visage of Noah, making plain mention of his skin. While the Ethiopian Orthodox Church guarded this treasure in their canon, the Western altars excised it. One must ask, for what purpose? Because it shattered the illusion they sought to weave. For over a millennium, the Church commissioned artisans to paint a new reality. Every masterpiece you have ever beheld, the Sistine Ceiling, the Last Supper, the portraits of Moses, Abraham, and David, all bear the pale faces of Europe. This was not mere artistic license. This was the weaponization of iconography. It was propaganda. Michelangelo did not render a white messiah by chance. He was paid by the mitre to birth an image that would displace the truth in the collective consciousness. The hierarchy also maintained a stranglehold on literacy. For ages, the scriptures were the exclusive domain of the priesthood. The word was bound in Latin, a tongue dead to the common man. To dare translate the Bible into the language of the people was to invite the executioner. William Tyndale was consumed by the flames in 1536 for the crime of giving the English people the scriptures. Why was the gate kept so tightly barred? Because if the flock could read the text for themselves, they might begin to question why the written descriptions mocked the painted idols. Yet the concealment was not merely religious, it was academic. The seeker found that universities and museums actively suppressed any evidence that defied the orthodox narrative. When the diggers unearthed advanced civilizations born of African soil, when the earth revealed the footprints of the ancients in Europe and the Americas, when relics surfaced that contradicted the fable of a primitive Africa, those findings were reburied in silence. The Smithsonian Institution has been caught time and again cloaking the proofs. In the dawn of the 1900s, journals whispered of ruins and bones in North America that hinted at a pre-Columbian African presence. Colossal stone heads in Mexico with undeniable African features, ancient skeletons in burial mounds bearing the traits of the mother continent. All of these wonders were catalogued, only to vanish from the public eye. Researchers who probed too deeply found the doors locked against them. Mainstream anthropology insists that humanity departed Africa and then evolved in isolation. But the blood does not lie. Genetic studies continue to find African DNA in eras and lands where it is forbidden to exist. When these anomalies reach the light, they are dismissed as errors, or the scientists are silenced. The illusion must be protected, at all costs. The Academy even birthed the Hamitic myth, a poison of the highest order. Twisting the 9th chapter of Genesis, the scholars of the 16 and 1700s preached that Ham, the son of Noah, was doomed to darkness and servitude. They wielded this falsehood as a divine warrant for the chains of slavery. Yet, if one dares to gaze deeply into the 9th chapter of Genesis, the truth uncoils itself from the parchment. It was not Ham who bore the weight of the curse, but his son, Canaan. Search the scrolls as you might, you will find no decree regarding the darkening of skin or a sentence of eternal servitude. That specific malediction was twisted by European scholars who took the quill to scripture, forging a theological weapon to sanctify the trade of human souls. This fabricated doctrine was poured into the foundations of seminaries and thundered from the holy pulpits. It was etched into the textbooks of the young. For age upon age, the pale faithful were indoctrinated to believe that binding the children of ebony in chains was the fulfillment of a divine prophecy. Do not mistake this for the dust of ancient history. That spiritual venom still courses through the veins of the sanctuary today. It is the silent gag that renders the assembly mute in the face of racial iniquity. The lie has burrowed deep into the marrow. Then, behold the hand of the empire. The seeker uncovered the hidden ledgers, proving that federal powers conspired actively to stifle the rising light of black sovereignty. COINTELPRO. The Bureau's counterintelligence shadow war was not merely a hunt for the lawless. It was a precision strike aimed at the heart of black leadership and the organizations birthed to uplift the people. The prophet Martin Luther King Jr. walked under the constant gaze of the state, harassed and threatened by the agency. Malcolm X was shadowed by watchful eyes until the very moment his spirit left this plane. The Black Panthers were infiltrated by serpents and dismantled from within. Fred Hampton was slain in his slumber, his life stolen by enforcers in league with federal ghosts. Why such an intense siege? Why expend a kingdom's ransom? If this lineage was merely another minority, why the fanatical obsession with keeping them under the heel? Because the architects of the system glimpsed a truth they could not abide. The hierarchy perceived a danger not of physical insurrection, but of a spiritual awakening. Thus, the government flooded the neighborhoods of the righteous with chemical stupors. This is no whisper of conspiracy. This is a reality etched in the stone of documented fact. In the 1980s, the Central Intelligence Agency facilitated the crack cocaine plague within black communities to finance their covert wars in Central America. Gary Webb, a brave scribe, brought this darkness to light in his Dark Alliance Chronicles. For speaking the forbidden truth, his path was shattered, and he departed this realm under clouds of suspicion, labeled a suicide. 2 bullets to the skull. Such is the fate of those who dare to tear the veil from these hidden machinations. Mass incarceration arose as the new plantation. Following the Civil War, after the 13th Amendment purportedly broke the chains, a deceptive loop was woven into the law. Slavery was banished from the land, save for one exception, as punishment for a crime. Suddenly, men of color were ensnared for the slightest infractions and cast into convict leasing, literally reshackled under the guise of justice. And that corrupt seed bloomed into the sprawling prison industrial complex that devours souls to this very day. Though black men comprise but 13% of the population, they form over 38% of the caged in the year 2026, as noted by the Bureau of Prison Statistics. The prophecy manifests the iron yoke weighing heavy upon the neck. The media performs its part in this grand theater with chilling perfection. Every moving picture, every broadcast, every tale spun reinforces the same dark myths: that the black man is a criminal, that he is savage, that he is lesser. These visions are not errors of chance. They are incantations of programming. When you hold the keys to the imagery, you hold the keys to perception itself. And when you govern perception, you become the architect of reality. Hollywood has never dared to craft a major epic revealing the Israelites in their true, sun-darkened glory. From the Ten Commandments to Exodus, gods and kings, the casting is a litany of pale faces. Every time they resurrect the biblical narratives, they clothe the ancients in the skin of the European. Even when their cameras roll in lands where the sun burns the skin brown, they place white actors in the frame. It is a deliberate ritual of erasure, and the propaganda has taken root. The masses, including the very people who have been erased, have rarely questioned the ivory image of the Messiah. They have not asked why a child born in Bethlehem to a Semitic mother, in a region where the sun paints everyone in shades of earth, would bear the visage of a man from the north. The fabricated icon has usurped the truth in the collective consciousness of the world. So when you ascend to a higher vantage point and survey the tapestry, when you see the Vatican cloaking scrolls, the Church commissioning false idols, the academies burying the evidence, the state crushing the movements of the people, and the media enchanting the mind, you realize this is no accident. This is a symphony of coordination. A multi-century, multi-institutional conspiracy designed to shroud the truth of who black people truly are. One scholar pierced the veil with the ultimate question. She asked, "Why would you exert such force to suppress a race for aeons if you truly believed they were the dregs of the earth? Why construct such elaborate cages and inflict constant harm upon this specific lineage just to convince yourself of your own elevation?" Because the truth is that most of these people naturally vibrate at a frequency closer to the divine, and those who cling to power have sought to sever that vibration, to clip the wings of the spirit, so they might feel superior to the rest. That is the heart of it. The oppression is not born of mere hatred. It is born of a trembling fear. It is about suppressing a cosmic power they do not possess. It is about preventing you from recalling the majesty of your origin. The man who exposed these secrets spoke a word of thunder. He declared, "This is not the dust of the past. This is an active, ongoing suppression unfolding in the eternal now. Right now, the system guards this lie with its life, for if the lie crumbles, the entire fortress falls into ruin." And now, you have gazed upon the machinery of the system. The gears of this grand illusion are finally turning within your mind, revealing the intricate mechanics of the great lie. Thus, when I pull back the curtain on what follows, when I decode the sigils and ciphers concealed in plain view, and demonstrate how ancient foretellings are manifesting in the events of 2026, you will grasp the desperate lengths to which they go to keep you slumbering. For the moment true perception strikes, the moment you gaze upon the naked truth, you become a threat of existential proportions to their empire of falsehoods. Yet, we must look beyond the mere machinations of mortal men, for the roots of this struggle bury themselves far deeper into the soil of reality. The revelation brought forth by the messenger was stark. This is not merely a clash of flesh and bone, but a war waged in the unseen realms of the spirit. Once your eyes adjust to the spectral light of the spiritual dimension, the chaotic mosaic of history suddenly aligns into a terrifyingly perfect picture. As the scripture of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 12, so hauntingly declares, "Our struggle is not against human adversaries, but against the hierarchies of invisible power, the cosmic rulers of this present darkness, and the spiritual forces of wickedness that dwell in the celestial spheres." Do not be fooled into thinking this is merely about prejudice in the hearts of men or the corruption rotting within our institutions. Looming behind the veil are demonic intelligences, veritable principalities, and ancient powers that conduct the symphony of oppression with a conductor's precision. Pause and reflect upon the anomaly. Why has the assault upon this specific lineage been so unyielding, so methodically cruel, spanning the breadth of centuries. Why does the persecution shapeshift yet persist, regardless of how much ground is gained? It is because the adversary recognizes your royal countenance, even while you remain blind to your own reflection. The Prince of Darkness himself holds the knowledge of your true lineage, and he trembles at the thought of the power that will be unleashed the moment you awaken. If the serpent can shroud your origins in mist, he can plunder your destiny. That is the oldest strategy in his arsenal. Keep the heir confused, and they will never wield the scepter of their birthright. He requires you to remain shackled to the belief that your history begins and ends with chains, that you are merely the offspring of the enslaved. By doing so, he ensures you never recall that you spring from a bloodline of sovereigns and holy priests. Understand this: the spiritual siege laid against this people is anything but accidental. You are not crushed because you are lesser. You are crushed because you are a titan, a lethal danger to the stability of the kingdom of shadows. When the true heirs of the covenant stir from their sleep, when the blood of the ancients remembers its source, the entire architecture of demonic control begins to fracture and collapse. The sacred texts leave no room for ambiguity. The tribe of Israel plays the central role in the unfolding drama of the apocalypse. Israel is the linchpin, the master key that unlocks the final sequence of eternity. Therefore, if the adversary can induce a coma upon the chosen, if he can bury them under mountains of lies and misery, he believes he can forestall the inevitable prophecies, delay the return of the Messiah, and postpone his own eternal sentencing. The stakes could not be higher. Simply observe the majestic gifts that have endured within this culture, surviving 400 years of brutal attempts to extinguish them. Consider the prophetic sight. How often have you witnessed the matriarchs, the elders who possess a knowing that transcends time, seeing events before they manifest in the physical realm? Look at the worship. The visceral, earth-shaking passion found within the sanctuary is far more than mere performance or entertainment. That is the echo of the Levitical priesthood, the temple worship of old, resonating through the very double helix of your DNA, a resilience forged in the fires of tribulation. The capacity to walk through the valley of the shadow of death and still possess joy is not of this world. It is purely supernatural. It is the hallmark of God's covenant people, carrying a flame the darkness cannot quench, evident even in the melodies, the blues, the jazz, the gospel that vibrate with spiritual authority. Hark back to the spirituals of old, the songs born in the fields, wade in the water, go down Moses, swing low, sweet chariot. These were never merely tunes to pass the time. They were cryptographic transmissions of liberty and divine deliverance. It was the voice of Israel piercing the heavens from the pit of bondage, identical to their cry in Egypt, reaching the same God. And in hearing that sound, the observer realized a profound truth. He understood that the chains, the hangings, the systemic imprisonment, all of the physical brutality, were merely the tangible manifestations of a demonic decree issued against the seed of Israel. The adversary acts through human vessels to execute a strictly spiritual agenda. And that agenda is terrifyingly simple. Ensure Israel remains in amnesia. Prevent the awakening at all costs. Stop them from stepping into the power of their covenant. Yet, the enemy made a fatal miscalculation regarding the unstoppable nature of prophecy. That which the Creator has spoken into existence must manifest, regardless of the fury with which hell fights against it, and the ancient scrolls decree that Israel shall indeed rise. The scrolls promise the lifting of the veil and the restoration of all things, as written in Isaiah chapter 60, verses 1 and 2. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. This phenomenon is unfolding before our very eyes across the globe. A dormant people are shaking off their slumber, and the primordial light is piercing the gloom. Once this spiritual renaissance reaches its tipping point, no force in the universe can arrest its momentum. The observer saw this inevitability and could no longer hold his tongue. He declared that once you grasp the spiritual dynamics, once you perceive the principalities pulling the strings, you realize we are navigating the twilight hours of a cosmic war where the victor has already been penned. The chosen line prevails. The tyrants face their reckoning. The kingdom of the Most High is anchored on earth. It is now merely a question of the sands running out of the hourglass. Therefore, understand that every arrow fired at you, every injustice endured, every heavy yoke placed upon your shoulders was never coincidence. It was precision targeting. You were hunted because of the royalty in your blood. Yet that very same lineage which painted a target on your back is the armor that ensures your triumph. For the spirit dwelling within your vessel is infinitely more powerful than the spirit that prowls the world, as affirmed in 1 John chapter 4, verse 4. Only by peering behind the veil of the physical realm can we truly comprehend the architecture of this reality, for it clarifies why the vitriol is so potent and why the chains of oppression are forged with such precise, systemic cruelty. It illuminates the chilling reason they cannot simply let you exist in peace, revealing that this relentless animosity transcends mere mortal prejudice or human bias. We are witnessing an ancient, infernal decree designed to eradicate the very bloodline of Abraham. Yet that dark command has ultimately crumbled because the children of Israel remain standing. The sleeping giant of Israel stirs from its slumber, sending shivers of terror through the adversary's ranks. So allow me to unveil the prophetic seal that locks this destiny in place. This is the oracle demonstrating that we walk within the era of manifestation at this very hour. When the pale messenger stumbled upon this secret, his entire world fractured and reformed. Here lies the supreme reality the powers that be have desperately sought to bury. Across the globe, the melanated children of the promise are reclaiming their ancient Hebrew heritage. Do not mistake this for mere chance or a fleeting cultural wave. This is the breath of prophecy taking shape, and we are dwelling in the sacred season of the unveiling. Mysteries obscured by the fog of centuries are now proclaimed from the digital rooftops, echoed through transmissions exactly like the one you are witnessing right now. Consider the vision given in Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. It continues, foretelling that many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. For throughout the ages, the scroll remained closed. Understanding was sequestered away in the shadows, yet it was written that as the final grains of sand fall, wisdom would multiply. Ponder this deep truth, for we exist in that very epoch. The digital web itself was foretold the capacity to disperse truth across the planet in the blink of an eye, and now the gatekeepers have lost their grip on the story. Mere decades ago, seeking this gnosis meant scouring dusty libraries for obscure texts, hunting for sages, or stumbling upon a hidden fellowship just to hear a whisper of truth. Today, the veil is torn asunder with a simple click, delivering the fullness of the revelation into your hands within a single hour. Illumination expands precisely as the ancient scripts predicted, and Zechariah chapter 8, verse 23, offers another fragment of this divine mosaic. It declares, "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nations, saying, We will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you." The peoples of the earth will instinctively grasp onto the garments of Israel, recognizing where the true path to salvation resides. This explains the stirring within certain souls of European descent. driving them to speak the forbidden truth. The messenger who laid this bare could not remain silent because he was compelled by the prophetic current. He stands not alone in this conviction, for across the four corners of the earth, strangers to the bloodline are perceiving the reality and aligning their spirits with it. This is not born of fashion nor political expediency, but because the Spirit is sweeping across the land, and the ancient words are breathing into life. Prepare yourselves, for the grand inversion is upon us. All that was pilfered shall be returned, every falsehood shall be stripped away, and every adversary shall face the scales, for it is irrevocably inscribed. Obadiah verse 15 thunders the warning. For the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen, as thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. The tormentors shall drink from the cup they forced upon others, and this is not mere vengeance. This is divine equity. This is the sovereign judgment of the Most High, as seen in Joel chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. For behold, in those days, and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations, and will plead with them there for my people, and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, and parted my land. The Creator is summoning the empires to the court of heaven to answer for their crimes against Israel. America shall stand trial, and Europe shall give an account. Any kingdom that dipped its hands in the blood of slavery, colonization, or tyranny will face the reckoning, yet behold the beauty within the storm. This restoration transcends the mere punishment of foes. It is the glorious moment of your ascension into the identity you were knit together to embody. It is the return of the Shekinah glory. It is the manifestation of covenant vows that promise dominion, inheritance, regal authority, and sacred honor. Every stolen birthright is returning, multiplied, and the observer from the other side beheld this timeline, realizing the hour is far later than the masses perceive. The omens are gathering speed, and the vibrational frequency of the earth is shifting upward with intensity. Matthew chapter 24 depicts the labor pains preceding the Messiah's return, with kingdoms clashing and rumors of conflict whispering on the wind. The earth groans with quakes, pestilence stalks the land, and hunger spreads. Gaze upon the state of the world in 2026, for the chaos is not random, but a series of celestial markers. Amidst this swirling tempest, the children of Israel are opening their eyes, and this synchronization is divinely orchestrated. We have reached the crescendo of the divine strategy. The dark forces labored tirelessly to keep you comatose, but the spiritual alarm is ringing, and you are finally stirring. When the veil is lifted, it can never be replaced. Once the memory of your true self returns, ignorance is no longer an option. The final testament left by that unlikely witness was profound. He declared, "Now you comprehend the secret for which they have spilled blood to keep hidden. Now you understand why they demand my silence. For this veracity shatters chains, and liberation is a lethal threat to an empire constructed on servitude. You are the living witnesses to the eschatological restoration of the chosen, and you are not mere spectators, but active participants in this holy drama. Now that the tapestry is unfurled before you, and you grasp the irrefutable evidence woven through the scripture, through the lens of history and the voice of prophecy, permit me to unveil the ciphers and sigils they concealed in plain sight. For once your vision is tuned to the frequency of truth, confirmation will bloom in every corner, much like the captivating reality that Messenger revealed. The identity of Israel has been cryptographically embedded into the fabric of culture, in mathematics, and in emblems that endured even while conscious memory was erased. The names of your forefathers may have faded from memory, but the blood never forgets. Deep within the double helix, the DNA held the records and left spiritual markers across the ages. Let us begin with the mathematics of the divine. The number 400 appears with a precision that defies all possibility of mere coincidence. It was foretold in Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. The Creator spoke to Abram, saying, "Know for a surety that your seed shall be strangers in a land that is not their own." The prophecy declared they would serve a foreign power and be crushed by affliction for exactly 400 years. A timeline of suffering etched in stone. Turn the pages of history to the year 1619, when the first ships bearing enslaved Africans touched the shores of the Americas. Measure the span from 1619 to the year 2019. It is a perfect cycle of 4 centuries. The 1619 project stands as a witness to this timeline. Regardless of political debates, the calendar tells the truth. It marked the completion of 400 years of tribulation in a foreign land. The prophecy was fulfilled to the very year. Then there is the mystery of the number 70. Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 10, speaks of 70 years of captivity, a rhythm that pulses through time. Observe the history of Black America through these 70-year cycles and witness the spiritual tides turning. It begins with the arrival in 1619. Add 70 years, and you arrive at 1689, when the chains of the slave codes were forged and hardened. Move to 1865, the year of emancipation. Add another 70 years to reach 1935. This lands us in the deepest valley of the Great Depression and the height of the Jim Crow era, when the darkness of oppression was absolute. 1954 brings the thunder of Brown versus Board of Education. Add another 70 years, and the calendar reveals the year 2024. We stand now in the wake of that convergence, witnessing an awakening that is exploding across the earth. The numbers align with a terrifying perfection, yet the colors also speak. In the Holy Scriptures, purple is the color of sovereignty. The robes of kings were purple. The veils of the sacred tabernacle were woven with purple. Gaze upon the tapestry of Black culture. There is a profound, unexplained affinity for purple that transcends mere fashion. It saturates the sanctuaries. It flows through the art. It is the subconscious memory of a royal heritage refusing to die. The symbol of the lion also roars from every corner of the culture. From the anthems of Bob Marley to the imagery of strength and pride, the Lion of Judah persists. Revelation 5, verse 5 declares, "Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah." Your conscious mind may not have known you were of Judah, but your spirit clung to the sigil. This is memory written in blood. Even the sustenance on your table bears witness. What is called soul food is not merely Southern invention. It is the dietary memory of the Israelites, the greens, the legumes, the maize bread, the simple, accessible foods that sustained a people through the valley of the shadow of death are the same staples consumed in the ancient Near East. These traditions survived because they are woven into the very fabric of who you are. Listen to the sound of worship. It is another undeniable marker. The sacred dialogue of call and response in the Black church is ancient. The leader speaks, and the people thunder back. This is not a Baptist invention. This is the rhythm of the Hebrew temple. The raw passion, the emotional outpouring, the spontaneous praise that rises like incense. That is how Israel worshipped before the ark. It survived the Middle Passage and forced conversions because it is encoded in the DNA. Even the crown upon your head holds spiritual weight. Numbers chapter 6 details the Nazirite vow, where the hair is consecrated and left uncut. To wear locks is not a trend, it is a spiritual declaration. The movement toward natural hair is about far more than shifting beauty standards. It is the reclamation of a glory that was shamed and suppressed. The texture of your hair, designed by the Creator, is a strand of your Hebrew identity. And Consider the supreme irony of the fields. Cotton. Enslaved hands picked the fibers to weave the clothing of their oppressors. Yet, in the ancient Levitical order, the priests were clad in garments of linen, which is born of flax. Cotton served that same sacred function. Even in chains, Israel was in the fields, handling the very material that symbolizes the priesthood. The symbolism is blinding once the veil is lifted. The outsider who exposed these patterns confessed that once he saw them, he could never look at the world the same way again. Every facet of black expression vibrates with Hebrew echoes. You have been walking out an ancient identity without speaking its name. You have carried the weight of the covenant without recalling the specific words of the promise. But now, the seal is broken, and knowledge transforms reality. Why is this unveiling happening at this precise moment? Because the timing is celestial. We are moving through a prophetic corridor. The fate of the age depends on whether the true Israel rises from slumber or remains in the dream. Look at the trembling of the nations. Social fracturing, political chaos, the earth groaning with disasters, and the drums of war. It is the script of Matthew 24, verses 6 through 8. These are but the first contractions of the birth pangs. In the last decade, more souls have awakened to their Hebrew lineage than in the previous century combined. Why this sudden acceleration? Because we are racing toward the zenith of prophetic fulfillment. The era of Gentile dominion is fading into twilight, and the dawn of Israel's restoration is breaking on the horizon. Even technology serves the ancient scrolls. The prophet Daniel foresaw that knowledge would increase. The digital web allows the truth to leap across oceans in an instant. No power on earth can suppress it now. When the hour is divinely appointed, truth consumes lies, like a wildfire in dry brush. A seismic generational shift is occurring. The youth are questioning the foundations. They are rejecting the narratives of their subjugation. They are excavating the truth for themselves. This is the chosen generation that will witness the full restoration of the circle. The witness who revealed these connections spoke with urgency because the sands of time are running out. The window for awakening before the gavel falls is closing. The Creator is long-suffering, but his scales are exact. The nations that held Israel captive will face judgment when the children fully awaken. When the remnant finally awakens to the memory of their royal bloodline and steps boldly into their covenant identity, the prophecy of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 15, begins to thunder across the heavens. It declares that the kingdoms of this fallen world have surrendered to become the kingdoms of our sovereign and of his anointed one, and he shall hold dominion for ever and ever. That is the magnitude of the battle before us. Do not mistake your presence here for chance. You are not watching this by accident, but are being spiritually activated for this specific, pivotal moment in time. Such an awakening brings a heaviness that you must be prepared to carry, for the acquisition of forbidden wisdom brings with it a solemn and unbreakable responsibility. The messenger who crossed the divide to reveal this admitted that the agony was not in unearthing the deception, but in the burden of living with the reality afterwards. Because once the veil is torn, you can never go back to sleep. As it is written in Luke chapter 12, verse 48, "Unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required." You now possess the keys that the multitudes are still searching for. You are now held accountable in the courts of heaven for what you do with this treasure. Ask yourself, how many of your own kin are still walking in a slumber? How many of your beloved friends are still shackled by the ancient lies? You owe them a sacred duty, not to force their eyes open, but to plant the seeds of awakening and stand as a beacon in their deepening night. You have become a custodian of forbidden knowledge, a role that carries both a terrible danger and a divine mandate. Understand that not every soul is ready to receive this frequency. Some will scoff at your words, and others will turn their backs on you, yet you must speak the truth regardless. Ezekiel chapter 3, verses 18 and 19 clearly define the heavy burden of the watchman. If you fail to warn the wicked of the judgment to come, their blood will be demanded from your own hands. To remain silent is no longer a permissible choice. For the Most High holds you strictly liable for every moment you chose comfort over the proclamation of truth. You cannot control whether their spirits are ready to accept it, but the mandate remains that you must tell them, sharing this wisdom with a spirit of meekness and grace. Share this light with patience, but do not neglect your own defense. Clothe yourself in the full armor of God, truth, righteousness, and faith, for you have now marked yourself as a target. The adversary will surely launch assaults against your peace of mind, your closest relationships, and your resources, just as the one who first exposed these secrets lost everything he held dear. Yet, he declared that the sacrifice was a small price to pay for obedience to the Creator. I ask you now, what are you willing to lay on the altar to ensure this truth survives? This revelation is simultaneously the heaviest cross you will carry and the greatest gift you will ever receive. You are finally free, knowing your true name, but now you are obligated to liberate the captives. That is the mission we are called to. If this message is piercing your heart and vibrating in your spirit right now, I need you to take a tangible step of faith. Type the word "awakened" in the comments immediately to signify that your spirit is aligning with this revelation and that you are receiving this download. Signal to the digital gatekeepers that this message is resonating, for there are forces actively trying to bury this video, and your engagement is the weapon that breaks through their suppression. Realize that you are not isolated in this wilderness. You are part of a rising legion. I urge you to think of one specific soul right now who desperately needs this light. Send this link to them without hesitation or delay, because the price of your silence is their continued enslavement in the house of bondage. If you hoard this light for yourself, you become complicit in the systems that keep your own people shackled to illusions. This information is far too vital to be kept in the shadows. You represent the sanity in an insane world. You are the awake amongst the dead. Declare your presence in the comments and let us know from which corner of the earth you are watching. The true Israel is stirring and rising across the four corners of the globe, and remember that the whistleblower risked his entire existence to smuggle this truth into your hands. You must honor that immense sacrifice by passing the torch forward. He broke ranks with his own bloodline because the fidelity to truth was greater than the loyalty to the tribe. Now, press that subscribe button with intention and ignite all notifications so that you never miss a transmission. Do not allow them to curate or control the knowledge that reaches your eyes. Your divine assignment is to shatter the blockade of information. Broadcast this message across every digital territory, be it Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or WhatsApp. Drop this truth into your group chats and disrupt the silence, for truth is infinitely more valuable than social comfort, and every soul you awaken becomes a catalyst to wake another. You are initiating a spiritual chain reaction. You are a bearer of the ancient flame, a light piercing the gloom, and a breaker of generational chains. By remaining with this transmission until the end, and by accepting this reality, you have stepped into a narrative that is vastly larger than your individual life. The one who brought this forth surrendered his comfort, his standing in the community, and his acceptance to tell you who you really are. What are you prepared to surrender to keep the fire burning? Will you sacrifice the safety of your comfort zone? Will you risk the friction in your relationships? Will you stand in the gap as a warrior for your people? Prepare yourself, for more forbidden wisdom is approaching on this frequency. Deeper revelations, fulfilling prophecies, and undeniable evidence are being prepared for release. It is imperative that you remain positioned here. Subscribe to ensure you are locked into this journey, for this is not merely about watching a single video. This is about a sustained and relentless awakening. This is about constructing a fortress of people who steadfastly refuse to be deceived any longer. We are not concerned with vanity metrics or the approval of algorithms. We are concerned with the total spiritual liberation of a chosen people. Your click is a weapon, your share is an act of war, your voice is a trumpet. When you subscribe and comment, you are signaling to the system that the truth is unstoppable. Be assured, they will attempt to shut this operation down, as they always do when the light becomes too bright. They will report the channel to silence us. They will flag the content and attempt to smear the message. So you must join the resistance by subscribing and spreading this signal far and wide. Let us overwhelm their attempts at suppression with the sheer force of our numbers. Before we depart, I want to engage in a powerful act of spiritual warfare with you. This is far more than a simple prayer. This is a solemn oath, a moment of cutting a covenant with the Most High. If you are truly ready to commit to this path, to walk in the light, to defend the wisdom, and to share it, I want you to speak this prayer aloud with me, meaning every syllable from the depths of your soul. Most High God of Israel, I stand before your throne with a heart that has been awakened and eyes that have finally been opened to see. I have beheld the truth that was concealed from my lineage, and I have heard the words that were forbidden to be spoken. On this sacred day, I issue a decree to the heavens. I cast aside the fabrications of the ages. I embrace the identity spoken over my spirit before time began. I am of the lineage of Israel. I am the selected one. I am sanctified and set apart. I strip away every counterfeit label forced upon my soul. I utterly reject the scripts written to imprison my mind. I shatter the heavy shackles of psychological bondage and walk free from the dungeon of deception. Any whisper suggesting my inferiority is hereby silenced and broken. Every distorted image that painted a fraudulent history is dismantled and discarded from my consciousness this very instant. I renounce the doctrines that served only to veil my true origin. By the power of your holy name, I swear a solemn vow to carry this revelation as a torch that shall never be extinguished. My voice shall rise like thunder when the world falls silent. I will stand as a fortress when the arrows of criticism fly. I will unveil the light when the fearful seek the shadows. I pledge my life to be a sentinel of the ancient, forbidden wisdom. I willingly shoulder the heavy mantle of responsibility that accompanies this profound spiritual awakening. I accept the solemn duty of the watchman on the wall. Encircle me with fire, O Most High, and guard my steps as I tread this path of absolute reality. Grant me the divine discernment to distinguish the season for speech from the season for silence. Infuse my spirit with the valor to remain standing, even if I am the only one remaining on the battlefield. Bestow upon me the iron fortitude to weather the storms of persecution. Cover me beneath the shadow of your wings and raise a standard against the onslaughts of the adversary. Let every instrument of destruction fashioned against me crumble into dust. I intercede for the souls still wandering in the fog of slumber. I call forth a seismic awakening to shake the foundations of my people. May the scales of blindness fall from their vision, just as they have vanished from my own. Let this revelation sweep across the lands like an unquenchable wildfire that no barrier can contain. I lift up the messenger who crossed the divide and hazarded his very life to unlock this knowledge for us. Surround him with a sanctuary of safety and pour out blessings upon his head. Let his valor be remembered in the halls of eternity. Transform his sacrifice into a catalyst that rouses the multitudes. I call down divine justice upon the systems that have conspired to bury this light. I decree the total unmasking of every institution that has shrouded our true lineage in darkness. Let every empire constructed upon the foundation of deceit crumble and fall. May every arrogant power that dares to exalt itself above the divine knowledge of the Creator be struck down and humbled in the dust. Let the walls of Babylon collapse, so that your kingdom may ascend in glory. I proclaim to the four winds that truth is surging like a tide, and the dry bones of Israel are stirring to life. I declare that no force in existence can halt what your hand has set in motion. No mechanical system, no forged weapon, and no demon from the abyss can delay the resurrection of your chosen ones. The words you have uttered are destiny. They shall not return to you empty. I am now tethered eternally to this reality. I am locked into a covenant that cannot be broken. I have crossed the threshold of no return. Retreat is impossible. Regression is forbidden. I am liberated from the maze of illusions, and I stride confidently in the power of my authentic self. I possess the knowledge of my essence and my owner. I am Israel. I am the elect. I am of royal blood. I am the priesthood. I am a nation set apart for holiness. By the authority of Yeshua, the roaring lion of Judah, the ancient root of David, the radiant morning star, the sovereign King of kings and Lord of lords, I seal this sacred oath forever. I fuse my soul to the cornerstone of this truth. I dedicate the entirety of my existence to the fueling of this great awakening. Make me a vessel for your will. Dispatch me to the farthest reaches. Let your voice resonate through my throat. I belong to you completely. Amen. 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 You have just sworn a vow before the throne of the Most High. This was no casual whisper. It was not mere symbolism. This is a blood covenant. You are now inextricably bound by the chains of truth. That very truth has shattered your cage. The person you were a moment ago no longer exists. You can never return to that shell. You have been transfigured. The dormancy is over. You are fully activated. You carry a divine commission. You are Israel. You are the chosen instrument. You wield immense power. Your eyes are open. Walk in the light of that reality. Inhabit it. Battle for it. And if destiny demands, be willing to lay down your life for it. For there are truths more valuable than breath itself. The messenger played his role. He shattered the silence, exposed the ancient deception, and paid the heavy toll. Now the baton passes to your hands. Disseminate this message. Incarnate this truth. Rouse your slumbering kin. Become the watchman, the bearer of the torch, the speaker of unadulterated reality. Shalom, O Israel. May peace be your foundation, strength your walls, courage your weapon, and protection your shield. May awakening flood your soul and the soul of every person you touch with this word. Do not fear solitude, for you do not walk alone. You are a vital thread in a global tapestry, a living component of prophetic history unfolding before our eyes. You are an architect of the great restoration. Now, rise up and march forward. To solidify this spiritual awakening and cultivate a fortress of community, we must move beyond mere digital sharing into tangible, constructive action. Establish or join local assemblies, perhaps forging alliances with established bodies like the NAACP or spiritual networks, to dissect and absorb these historical and spiritual revelations collectively. Immerse yourself in educational endeavors that champion the integrity of historical truth. Demand curricula that honor the monumental contributions of African civilizations and navigate the profound nuances of biblical interpretation within our schools. Lend your strength to the dismantling of systemic injustice, specifically supporting those organizations fighting the scourge of mass incarceration. This plague weighs heavily upon Black communities, a fact starkly illuminated by the statistics of 2026. The data reveals a harrowing disparity. Black men constitute 38% of the federal prison population, despite representing a mere 13% of the total populace. Foster dialogue across lines of faith and race to bridge the yawning chasms of division and dissolve the mists of misunderstanding. Forge unbreakable coalitions grounded in the bedrock values of righteousness and absolute truth. In acting thus, we do more than simply venerate these revelations. We become active architects of healing and empowerment within our fractured societies.